Good morning. Thank you for joining us this beautiful, beautiful Sunday morning. Now it's beautiful, but it might be foggy in the morning when you're actually watching this if the sun hasn't burned through. Anyway, thank you for joining us. We're glad to have you here. We'd love to have you join us in church. We miss seeing all your faces, but I guess we understand. I just have a couple of things to go over. Our men's group will be meeting at 6:30 on Monday night here at the Father's house. If you want to be a part of that, let Pastor Carlos, or CR know. And they're also having the meeting still on Zoom. So if you want to be a part of it, they'd love to have you join them. Our ladies group is still meeting on Thursday nights at 6:30 on Zoom. We'd love to have you be a part of that. Let Deanne Paradis or myself know. Again, everyone's welcome, whether you're here in the area or outside the area. So we'd love to have you join us. Today is also Sunday morning at 9:15, we're kicking off a Celebrate Recovery class. So if you want to be a part of that, again, it's here at the Father's house at 9:15. If you know anybody that would be interested in being part of it, we'd love to have. Anyone's welcome. You know our motto here, love's arms open wide to anyone. So today is our Missions Sunday offering. I just wanted to share with you, Pastor Mario sent over a video this week of the Argentina building getting plastered. So I know I had talked earlier about raising money to get the building plastered because it's their rainy season and it's made of brick, so the water was weeping in through the brick and causing some mold issues. So they were plastering the building this week, so I'm super excited about that, and congratulations Pastor Juan and Pastor Patricia in having that getting done, and one more step towards completing that church and orphanage in Argentina. So you know the drill. You can go online to thefathershouse.org. You can click on the giving button. You can click a one-time gift, a recurring gift, or give to our missions that way. Also, I wanted to mention, last week we talked about our brother Satoru Avery passing. There's a button on the website that says Other. And what we'd like to do is put together a fund to help pay for Satoru's service. So if you want to give to that, like I said, click on the Other button and we'll make sure that it goes to the family to help towards putting him to rest. You can mail a check to the Father's house at 133 Bernal Road, San Jose, California, 95119. Or if you live in the local area and you want to give that way, give Pastor Carl or I a call, and we'd love to come by and pick up a check or your money and just see your smiling face. So again, thank you for all your generosity through this time. I know with costs of everything just going through the roof, it's really hard to commit to tithes, but you know, it's just going to be a blessing returned back to you. So again, thank you for your generosity. Really, that's all I have to cover today. So I guess we'll turn the time over to Pastor Carl.
Well, good morning, Father's House. How are you today? I know that you guys are having a great day with this great weather. It's such beautiful, beautiful fall weather. I know that you can't but help appreciate it and enjoy it. Get out, spend some time in it. I don't know, go find a chair out in your backyard somewhere to read a good book, take a nice nap, whatever the case might be. This is the time of year that you can do it and really get out and enjoy this weather. Anyway, I've got some things to talk to you about today, and I'm just glad to be here with you. I'm always glad to be here with you. It's just always fun to be here and to talk with you and to think about different things and just kind of just be present, I guess, in this world and what's going on. So what have I got to say today? What I want to talk about? Well, the first thing is when Penny was talking about giving to the benevolent fund for Satoru and Crystal, they kind of are in a some financial stress over this, the hospitalization, extended hospital stay of Satoru, and also the loss of benefits when he passed of what Crystal's going to receive. So we want to reach out and just give her a nice benevolent offering and gift. So anything you can do would be greatly appreciated. Kind of like what Penny said, if you go to our website and there's a give button, you can push the give button, and when you get in there, there's a drop down category of what category you can give, and just use the other category, which is just kind of a miscellaneous account or category. That way we'll make sure that it gets to Satoru. If you find you're having a problem getting in that And if you want to put it into a different account, just email Penny or myself or call us or text us and let us know, and we'll make sure the money gets to the right place. But I just have to say the one thing I love about the Father's house is I love that with all of us that we're giving, for as small as we are, the amount of money we give, whether it be like Penny talked about with the orphanage and church, with the putting the stucco on it, and with the other things as well. There's just other things we've given to. You guys have always just responded. I'm so proud of you, and I'm just proud to be a part of the Father's house. It's my privilege, and my wife, I'm sure Penny feels the same way. It's our privilege to be a part of you for this last, coming up on 11 years that we spent together. I know I haven't aged that much in 11 years. Well, maybe that's not the truth. I probably have. I'm losing my hair, getting a few more wrinkles on my face, but I still got this big old smile because I'm pretty happy. Anyway, what are we going to talk about today? Well, we've been talking about the 7 pillars of wisdom. And I want to conclude with that today. And so we're going to finish up the 7 pillars of wisdom, which has been going on for, gosh, I don't know, maybe 8, 9, 10 weeks. But it's really kind of just an extension of what we've been talking about all year. So started at the beginning, the very first part of the year, starting January, first week in January, we talked about the virtues. And we talked about an extraordinary spirit, which is the display of the virtues to some extent. And then we started talking about the 7 pillars of wisdom. So this whole year, what we've talked about is we've just talked about wisdom. And we've talked about what wisdom is, or what it looks like, and how we acquire wisdom, why wisdom is important to us, and all the different nuances of this study that we've done on wisdom. But the last couple of weeks, what I've been focusing in, I've been focusing in on fear of the Lord, and the idea that all real true wisdom for the Christian and for the Jews, and it would also actually be true for the Muslim faith, would be that all true wisdom starts with fear of the Lord. And the idea, we talked about that, of realizing the holiness of God, the otherness of God, that he's not like us, and that rather than trying to fit God into our image of how we think he should be, what our job and responsibility is as people giving honor and glory and duty back to God, is to make sure that we understand his image. So rather than it God being about what we think about God, it's about what God thinks about us and what God thinks in different circumstances and situations. So we've talked about that. So in talking about fear of the Lord, I'm going to just kind of briefly touch base on that once again, and then I'm going to go back and we're going to kind of bring closure to this whole section on Sophia, which is the Greek word for wisdom, or Hagia Sophia, which is holy wisdom. So this verse that I want to talk about, this last one today, and then I'm going to read the whole text again that we started off with here in Proverbs chapter 9. And we're going to pick this up then in verse 10. And it says, and we've talked about this, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. So we talked again about this idea of fear of the Lord being the beginning of wisdom. And the idea is that right relationship, that right place with God. We've also talked about that, about understanding. We've talked about the idea of discernment and about discretion in our life. We also talked about the idea of not reproving a scoffer. And when we're reproved, to be wise and not to scoff when people are trying to correct us or when people are trying to enlighten us. We talked about not walking in the way of the foolish. And then we have also talked here about what we're talking about here now is fear of the Lord as the beginning or the first real step towards wisdom. And also then knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. It's interesting, that word, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. That word understanding there is the same word, but in this sense it's applied to God rather than it's applied to human understanding, is discernment towards God, or discernment about what God, it's like discerning what God wants you to do in a given situation, as opposed to what you think you should do. So this discretion that we're talking about and where wisdom comes from is when we fear the Lord, it starts with that. The second question that we're kind of asking ourselves is, what would God do in this situation? How would I discern how the way that God wants me to handle some kind of an event in my life that is before me? It could be as simple as this. Let's say that you're a businessman and you're in a managerial position. and you, or maybe you're in, upper management, and you're in a meeting with the upper managers, and your boss tells you, what I want you to do is I want you to go back, like let's say you're selling a house, and you say, I want you to go back and tell them that that you'll give them, if they buy the house, you'll give them $10,000 or $5,000 off the house. But what we'll do is we'll say that we'll pay it through at escrow and pay their closing costs. But we're really not going to give them $5,000 back, because really the closing costs are only going to cost us $2,500. So really it's only going to be a $2,500 reduction on the price, as opposed to a $5,000. And in that, the person that's buying the house might think they're getting a $5,000 deduction, but in reality, and it might sound that way, but in reality, when everything comes out to wash, it's only going to be half that amount. And you knew that going forward in talking with this client that was going to buy the property that maybe you were representing the seller of. In that case, you would have a moral dilemma, because what you're doing is that you're deceiving the person buying the house, because they're really not going to get $5,000 off. They're going to get $2,500 off. And so you've got to make the decision in that case is, okay, is this morally right for me to do? Now, if you don't do that and your boss wants you to do that, you know that you've got a problem, because he's going to be mad at you or she's going to be mad at you. And then what's going to happen is you could potentially be disciplined or fired because you didn't follow through on that action. But at the same time, you know that you wouldn't be representing fairly to the buyer what the circumstance was. So you've kind of got a moral dilemma. Well, what the 7 pillars of wisdom, and what wisdom does, when we talk about fear of the Lord and we talk about knowledge of the Holy One, is understanding, or the idea of discernment. It's almost like in the middle of that moral dilemma, asking yourself, what is it that I should do? What is it that God would want me to do? And how would I be able to properly kind of navigate through these waters by understanding, first of all, that I fear God, I honor God, I respect Him. And because of that, I know I've got to do the morally right thing here, or I really wouldn't even be fearing God. So you're asking God in that instance for discernment. Now, God could give you several different ways that you could handle that, wouldn't He? And not maybe even violate either one of the two people. You could go back and explain to them, my boss wants to give a $5,000 discount on the house if you buy the house. But the way that works is that would be applied to your non-recurring closing costs when in escrow after everything closes. However, it may not be $5,000. It may only be $2,500. But you could say, but either way, the worst you would do at worst is you would be guaranteed at least $2,500 of your costs would be covered. And if there were additional costs that went up to $5,000, they would be covered. So there wouldn't be any money out of your pocket. In doing something like that, you wouldn't be betraying your boss, what he wanted you to do, and you wouldn't be betraying the buyer of the house as you're acting on their behalf, because you're being very forthright and honest with them. In that case, maybe you could settle justice and what would be morally honorable and right to do, because God gave you discernment on how to handle the situation. Now, I'm not saying that that might be the best answer. I'm just kind of giving that as maybe an example of how you might work out this idea of understanding what God's thoughts are about something and how to apply it to life. That becomes important because not every issue in life, as you know it, is a black and white issue. There's a lot of gray areas. When you talk about justice, or you talk about self-control or strength of mind or courage or anything else, there's always it's always in between these circumstances that kind of dictate what you should do. And there's no hard and fast rule every time on what you should do in every circumstance. But when we understand fear of the Lord and we begin to then discern what God would have us to do, what we're doing is we're turning our posture towards God, and we're asking that God would give us wisdom in that area of life. Now, because we've studied the virtues, because we've studied what a Christian moral life should look like, we've got some information in our hearts and mind to draw from that help us make the right application concerning somebody that's buying a home for us, somebody that's buying a car from us, our transaction in a business way, whatever the case might be. And so it's just something to think about. I want to leave a period there in talking about fear of the Lord, and I want to now kind of start a new paragraph and the end paragraph or the conclusion about what we've talked about for about the last 9.5 months now. And I said, what we've really been on a journey of and a pilgrimage of is we've been on this pilgrimage of talking about the virtues, about what an extraordinary life would look like. We've talked about the 7 pillars of wisdom, all to gear in mind of how it is that a Christian ought to carry themselves in the world that's always constantly changing. But what it's really been, kind of on the spiritual level, it's been an invitation by the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of Christ, the Spirit of wisdom, for us to pursue wisdom, to pursue the thoughts and mind and heart of God on matters. And so there's this open invitation that God gives. And he basically says in this invitation that anybody that comes and pursues wisdom will not be disappointed. That I will be to that person everything that person could ever need or want. We've talked many times in this series about that if you have and you take pride in your health, or you rely on your health for life, that your health will one day fade. And the riches that you have, the security that you have financially, well, you know too that could be gone. You could be today a person of fame, and tomorrow you might be an infamous person. As we've seen people that rise in fame, and at the same time that they fall in fame. We can also see people that have risen in glory, whether it would be in battle or honor in battle, and then only to be defeated later on in their life. All those things are fleeting. All of those things will leave you and forsake you. But on your deathbed, the very end of your life, the one thing that will always remain with you is wisdom and knowledge of God and the virtues and how to live a moral life. Those things will never be bankrupt in you if you pursue wisdom and follow that path. And so today what I want to close with, it's going to be kind of a short one today, but what I want to close with is this reading again out of this text in Proverbs chapter 9, starting in verse 1. It's the final invitation of wisdom. It's the closing of her invitation for the last 9 chapters of what we've read. But now it's the closing invitation where she's inviting us to join her on this pursuit of wisdom. So Sophia, her holy wisdom, has this to say. Wisdom has built her house. She has hewn out her 7 pillars. She has prepared her food. She has mixed her wine. She has also set her table. She has set out her maidens. She calls from the tops of the heights of the city. Who is naive, let him turn and hear. To him who lacks understanding, she says, come, eat my food and drink the wine that I have mixed. Forsake your folly and live, and proceed in the way of understanding. He who corrects a scoffer gets dishonor for himself, and he who reproves the wicked man gets insult for himself. Do not reprove a scoffer, or he will hate you. Reprove a wise man, and he will love you. Give instruction to the wise man, and he will still be wiser. Teach a righteous man, and he will increase his learning. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. Now wisdom closes off by these final words saying that this is what wisdom will do in your life. It's the promise of God to all who pursue wisdom. And wisdom says that for by me your days will be multiplied, and years of life will be added to you. If you are wise for yourself, and if you scoff, you alone will bear it. What Solomon is saying, and what Lady Wisdom here is saying, is at the end of the life, at the end of your life, and as you pursue wisdom in life, her promises to you is that you'll live a long life, a prosperous life. Not prosperous in the way where you might have financial wealth, or you might have fame, or you might have honor, or you might have physical strength. No, see, the promise is much bigger than that. The fact that Lady Wisdom says that she's more precious than silver and more costly than gold, that the spirit of wisdom that we find in the person of Jesus Christ is that which is enduring not just in this life, but in the following life. And so what we do and what we find is that the pursuit of wisdom for us is an end in itself, because that wisdom leads us directly to understanding better the character and the heart and the thoughts of God. In the book of Ecclesiastes, at the very end, and really the last thing that really Solomon kind of wrote on the matter, he said, and talking about at the end of the day about honoring God and fearing God in the days of your youth, so that when the evil days come, or what he means by evil there is when your older days come, where your body breaks down, where your eyes no longer see, your ears no longer hear, when your strength leaves you and mighty men stoop down, when your heart begins to cause you problems and your mind begins to fade. And he says, remember this. When everything has been said, everything that has been written, everything that you could study, anything that you can learn, it basically says, and at the end of it all is that that which is said last of all by Solomon is simply this: that when all has been said, at the end of it all, I give this charge to every man and to every generation, and that is to fear God. And when we do that, and we begin from that place of fearing the Lord and understanding him, giving him his due in his first priority, then what we find is our life is based on his reality and not ours, his plans and not ours. But when we do that, when we pursue wisdom, we understand honoring God and what that means, the promise in these texts is that we'll live a long life. It also talks about a prosperous life. Anybody who lives with those virtues lives a better life, because the virtues give you a better life, a more excellent life, or an extraordinary life based on what the virtues are. They become virtues that become unshakable in you, no matter what the circumstances are. And that's why it's important for us. Scripture also says earlier on in Proverbs that if you fear the Lord and you walk by that principle, that it will be healing to your bones. There's a part when we fear God and walk in these ways, that there's a certain dimension of healing that comes to our life. In all of this, the only thing that I can say is at the end of it all is this: if you'll choose to say yes to wisdom, yes to love, yes to pursuing everything that God has for you, his promise is that in the hour that you need wisdom, she will not depart from you. She will always be with you. I hope you'll consider what I've said and what others have said for the last 9.5 months. Go back and look at them and study them. They're some of the most important things and the most valuable things you can learn in the Christian life. Well, God bless you. I hope you have a great weekend, and I look forward to seeing you again next week when we start talking through the book of James, another book of wisdom that comes out of the New Testament. Have a great day.